Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Back for another week.
Back for another week, the
25th of April.
Hey, back for another week.
Back for another week.
Back for another week, boys. 25th of April, back for another week.
It is, in fact, Anzac Day here in Australia today, the day where we commemorate all of the fallen soldiers.
Hashtag never forget.
Never forget. Pretty sure that was a Halo reference, but anyway. The funny thing I saw on the news today about Anzac Day, just incidentally, while we're bringing the show in.
Mm-hmm.
So last year we weren't able to do any of the, gathering because of the middle of the pandemic.
Why?
Right?
What happened?
So, this global pandemic.
No, it doesn't ring any bells.
Millions are dead and millions are still dying.
No, it doesn't. Are you talking about here in Australia or?
I mean, like everywhere. Like it's literally the biggest news story the last 24 months. But,
that's weird. I don't know. I don't micro sleep or something. I just missed that. But sorry, go ahead. There's a global pandemic.
And I'm assuming during that time as well that everyone kind of acknowledged that maybe we could put on hold any kind of commemorative or like glorification of lots of people dying, given the fact that currently a lot of people were dying and that, these things were more important. We all took it really maturely, and no one was taking to headlines to complain about the woke lefty culture shutting down Anzac Day last year. I'm sure that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's right.
The conversation was very civil. It's still very civil. So
civil.
I mean, I'm not going to get into virtue signaling about whatever Anzac Day in general, but the funny thing is that today, so the dawn service in Melbourne did go ahead with like invite only, exclusive event, 1,400 people, something were there, but a bunch of people rocked up and just sort of out of habit, I guess, or whatever, but they were fenced off.
People who were not on the guest list.
Not on the guest list. They were fenced off.
Sorry, I don't think you can. I don't think you can respect the dead with those shoes, mate. Should try again next year, mate. Bring some girls.
Yeah, that's basically what it is, isn't it? But people weren't happy that they were locked out of the event, and I believe that I mean. Who knows the fact? Like, who cares that there's an outbreak in Perth, and that potentially could be swimming, around in the community anywhere in Australia right now.
Pandemic's over, Adam. All of our workplaces want us to get to work in the office full time. We've all been vaccinated. Pandemic's over. It's all done. Don't worry about it anymore.
Yep. No, there's 85,000 people at the MCG today, so
that's
don't worry about it.
And no one's wearing masks anymore. So obviously, this thing's totally over, and we can just forget about it and just act like it never happened and go back to our shit trash lives that we had before.
Yeah, let's do that. It sounds fun.
Sounds great. Yeah. Never mind that like one of those people in Perth did actually make it back here after quarantining and tested positive.
No. So you've got a very 2020 mentality, Tom, where the pandemic is still a live thing that's currently killing millions of people and is if anything, is more infectious than it was last year because of all the different variants of concern. But what you do is you need to go in with a 2021 attitude where you just blindly allow yourself to be infected at every available opportunity by doing the opposite of everything that we've been doing for the last year. That will show that'll show the virus. But just licking each other's faces.
I heard it coming out of my mouth, and I realized where I was wrong. But I heard it.
You're so negative, mate. You're so negative.
I've listened, I've learned, and I've acted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely what we want to do is, take the boomer remover right into the midst of the World War II veterans and just kill off the last of them because, who cares? Like, my freedom, my right.
Actually, I was on the train the other day, and one of the few people who wasn't wearing a mask was just a rather old person. And I was like, come on.
Maybe he's been vaccinated. Might have been vaccinated, maybe. Who knows?
Maybe, but we're hearing all these stories of people who are vaccinated still getting it.
So you can be vaccinated and still be a vector for disease. Like, you might not, be harmed yourself, but if you're vaccinated, you can still pass the disease on to others. So
to someone else.
Given the extraordinary incredible rollout of Australia's vaccine program, and when I say incredible, in that it is not credible, Like, we've vaccinated, what is it, 1 out of 25 million people. And we're not planning on being vaccinated all properly until next year, although that's a target, and this government's not doing target. It's got aspirations. It's trying to, the law of attraction. It's using The Secret to just will a vaccination program into being, because goals and, lists and, organizing things is outside of their control, obviously. So,
So,
it's going great.
So that's
and
literally going great.
I'm definitely not just about to walk into the sea. Like, it's definitely, everything's fantastic.
Well, George, if you think...
Sorry, no, Adam, go ahead. Your joke was probably better than mine.
No, you can... Okay, well, look, all I was going to say was, if you're feeling good now, wait till the end of the show once we've had a discussion on this week's current affairs, because I'm sure by the end of it, you'll be feeling fantastic.
Great. And this show always makes me feel better. No, as I'm saying it, the words don't make sense coming out of my mouth. No, that's definitely wrong.
Yeah. Couldn't say that with a straight face.
Yeah.
I suppose in some... I guess the really big story this week, top story, is both a positive story but also not a positive story. The trial of George Floyd's killer concluded this week.
We're allowed to say
now.
murderer.
Yes, we're allowed to say murderer now because the officer who murdered George Floyd was found guilty on all 3 counts.
Turns out, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you kneel on someone's neck for 9 minutes, you might kill them. I don't know if anyone out there needed to know that, but just in case you're wondering, in case you're thinking of busting a knee on someone's head anytime soon, you probably shouldn't do that. It's pretty bad for them. As it turns out, can result in murder. So. What
about like 8.5 minutes? Like, can you get away
with that? That's fine, obviously, but you got to draw the line somewhere. But. PC culture can't say anything nowadays, and
no, but it's a big deal in the sense that this rarely ever happens.
Who could have possibly foreseen? Who could have possibly foreseen if you kneel on someone's neck for 10 minutes? They'll die. Who could have known? Now we know, obviously. So now, we'll go forward with that knowledge. We'll live in a much better society.
What I meant was this never happens in the sense that a white police officer who has straight up murdered a black person, they practically never face any kind of repercussions at all. And so, yes, not only was there even a trial, that trial ended in what most people, I feel, would have said, totally murdered that guy. We've been saying it all year. It's now official, and they actually, the jury actually said, totally murdered that guy. So there we go. That is good news.
One of the parts of the trial, they had a medical expert on there saying, it could have been the drugs in his system. It could have been all of these excuses to say it wasn't obviously the thing that it was that killed George Floyd. But my favorite part, he says, and look, he's right next to a tailpipe there, so it could have been carbon monoxide poisoning. You don't know. and the prosecution was like, but was the car even on? And how would you know that? Did you test for any of those things? It's like, well, no, but I just saw a tailpipe, and I just
speculating,
planting seeds. Just
was there anything in the autopsy to indicate that? Of course not.
No.
I'm just saying horse shit.
Oh, sorry, I'm the bullshit artist. I'm from the other side, so
yeah.
I just throwing out ideas.
So that's good news in that because I shudder to think what what we saw last year in the wake of George Floyd being murdered. That if then the murderer got off on that. I mean that's not a new that's not a new outcome. That's happened a lot of times in these sorts of cases. But I mean, just with the fever pitch that everything was at, that it would have been quite, I think, very, very scary.
It was definitely a thing. Like, I remember seeing an African American man interviewed on MSNBC, and he said, but basically, this is all good. I think he should have been convicted. I think he did it. But mostly I'm just relieved that my city's not going to burn tonight. And I was like, wow, well, that's grim. Yep. That's for my morning podcast.
Yeah, that
news
is
podcast. And I was like, it is 8 a.m. This is too early for this.
Humbling perspective to have on it, because that's the other part of this. So the good news, murderer who committed murder has been convicted of murder and will go to jail. Good news.
Great.
Bad news, he did the murder, obviously, so that's bad. And then everything that has just come afterwards because where to start with
Tom, so you're saying that they've now solved racial inequality in America?
My God, the white people everywhere can breathe a sigh of relief. We're off the hook.
Right. Done.
It's all over now. We're off the hook. We solved racism, Adam. No, in fact,
we got the one bad apple, and so we're good. We're good, right?
Yeah. Of course we're good. No, we're not. Quite the opposite. But the problem is, so many people have kind of been treating it that way. Have been like, well, he went to jail. We did it. It's done. It's like none. Like, what about Breonna Taylor? What about? I think we didn't even talk about them at the time. I think because we got caught up with a lot more like local Australian issues. But there were like 2 black people killed by police last week.
Dante Wright.
Like in the week, in the week leading up to the end of this trial, there were 2 more that were equally as high profile and all that sort of stuff. So it's still a huge, gigantic problem. And the discussion around reforming or abolishing policing as we currently know it, which I feel is a very important distinction to make, because that's what all the like conservative critics of the idea of defunding or abolishing the police latch onto, where they're like, oh, they just want a lawless society of nothing.
We really just need to call it something else. We just need to call it police reform or something. Like it just needs to be called something else, because abolishing the police just gives ammunition to the other side for them to say whatever the fuck they want about it. Like
there are some people that literally do want to. Like I was watching an interview,
but they are wrong. I don't.
It was literally like, we need to just get rid of the police and start again. I'm like,
yeah. Well, and that's not really like
with that.
No sensible person is actually saying we shouldn't have any kind of law enforcement. The argument that I see people making is that we need to have services that are in place, mental health services in particular, to deal with these kinds of issues. Traffic infringements, like that Dante Wright guy, was a guy in his 20s and he got pulled over for a traffic violation because he had an air freshener, hanging off his rear window. Like it was such a nothing thing that didn't need to be escalated by police. He certainly didn't need to end in his death. Like there's a bunch of that stuff out there. It's like, send the ticket in the mail. Like there's a bunch of someone's having a mental health crisis. Don't send armed guys to go and deal with it. Send mental health professionals who are trained to deal with this thing. Like it's more about apportioning responsibility for that typically just falls to police work because they're the last port of call. There's no one else to deal with it, so let's just give it to the police. Maybe have specialized services for those things and take those responsibilities away from the police. That is what most people are saying, but that was 3 paragraphs I gave you, and stop the police and abolish the police is obviously, it's much catchier. You could put it on a banner. So I understand why people have... but like we really just need to do away with that language. It's becoming more harmful than helpful at this stage. I don't know.
I think it's people needing to understand the difference. I think it's between like capital P and lowercase p police. There's like policing the action, and then there's the police, the organization, or like the structure, the police as they exist. I can't think of a better way to phrase it, but yeah, sort of like the difference of just there's the police, the institution, and then there's the idea of policing, the verb. So yeah, it's like knowing the difference between the two. But no, you're right. Messaging thing, it's probably that's a discussion for another day. But
I think it does mean different things to different people. So part of the problem is
definitely,
as George said, the language is being thrown out there. Some people assume that people want some sort of hippie society. Other people are assuming that they want more modest stuff. Some people, everyone's sort of interpreting it differently, and certain community groups might say one thing and some people might say something else. So what that does is it leads to harmony, and
all of the data, all of the polling data has shown that the vast majority of Americans want a justice system that is more equitable. The majority of Americans are not calling for the abolition of police, and we live in kumbaya land and hold hands and, smoke joints and, live in the, what's that Wild Wild Country documentary with Osho and we all dress up in red, and like that's not what people are talking about. Like most sane thinking people are arguing for police, what should actually be called police reform, right? And in a lot of instances, defunding is really the opposite of what you want to do. I heard a guy who was on, I forget which podcast it was. It was a jiu-jitsu expert who specifically trains police in like the ability to take people down without, killing them or hurting them. I think he might have been on Sam Harris's podcast or Tim Ferriss's podcast, one of those. And this is what he does all day, every day, is he trains police departments in the use of non-lethal force. And you're talking about how little resources there are devoted to training police to, use their guns effectively, how to disarm people, how to, de-escalate conflict and all this sort of stuff. So because in America, everyone's armed.
They can afford the latest grenade launchers and armored personnel carriers.
That's different. You're talking about the 1033 program, which is basically like giving them military surplus. The military is well funded. The police is not necessarily well funded, right? So they're just getting off cuts and things like that from the military. So they're definitely well armed, but they're not necessarily well funded in terms of like resources and training. And you really need to be training. Jocko Willink, who's a famous former Marine and jiu-jitsu guy, reckons that they should be training 20% of the time in terms of like training for the job that they are doing, de-escalating, physical training, jiu-jitsu, like the sort of ways of resolving conflict that are not going to end in someone getting shot because some officer gets his amygdala hijacked and fears for his life. Like that involves more resources, not less. I would think.
I mean, that's a military sort of thing where you have a 3-tiered system where you have an active people that are out doing the job. You have some people that are training. They've got people that are on rest. So you have a 3-cycle system. But again, to do that, you then effectively need to triple your numbers. So you've got, something in reserve at any one time. But,
which involves more resources, would it not? If you need to double or triple your capacity, then that's what needs to happen. Like, surely we can't live in a world where someone, some 13-year-old kid running from police warrants getting shot in the back. Like it just doesn't make sense. And so if what they're doing is not working, then they need to do something else. I don't think pulling all the money out of the system is going to help because a lot of these places are chronically underfunded to begin with. If anything, they need either better allocation of resources or more resources.
Yeah, I think that's what they mean by the general idea of defunding the police. It's to like put the money where it should be for the problems that they are tackling.
Yeah.
And if that is still with the police in whatever training or whatever, then if it's shown that it will actually do some good rather than just attract more gung-ho, jacked up yahoos who are just keen to shoot people.
It's cops and robbers, Tom. That's what you do. That's what
and that's where the societal aspect, I feel, of it comes in, because it seems like it attracts a certain mindset.
You ain't never seen Bad Boys 2. You never shot 2 guns diving through the air. You never shot your gun in the air and said,
They should be better equipped to be screening for those kinds of people. Like the Simpsons reference I always remember is the when Marge trains to be a police officer and she's in basic training and Chief Wiggum's like taking them through whatever, and then there's this tall skinny guy who's like really twitchy and is just like it's like, enough with the blah blah blah, when do we get the guns? And they say, you don't get a gun until you tell me your name. He's like, I'm headed up to here with your rules.
Yeah.
And then just walks off.
Except
he's like just clearly all
in American society, that guy gets made sergeant. That's the difference.
Oh yeah, they hand him like grenade launchers, keys to the tank, and then we're all good to go.
But anyway, don't exaggerate, man. It's not a tank; it's a light armored vehicle. Okay.
They could definitely withstand an RPG.
Totally different.
Tom, so in terms of the fallout, what have you been reading in terms of like? It's going?
People like Tucker Carlson have just been losing their minds, yelling about, they just want to live in the lawless hippie commune kind of analogy or whatever. But also I don't have this clip in front of me, I wish I did, where he was interviewing, I think, a former police trainer or like someone who'd worked in the police departments who... I think he was clearly expecting him to be like someone on the show who'd be agreeing with him, but this guy was like, no, like what the officer who murdered George Floyd did was not the right thing to do. Like, no, like that force was excessive and da-da-da-da-da-da. And Tucker Carlson was like, I'm sorry, but blah, blah, blah. And he does this weird, nervous, like kind of laugh. Like his brain snaps. While he's just frantically trying to shut down this guy who's not agreeing with him. He's like, nope, we're done. Thank you. And just guy disappears, and it's back to the Tucker Carlson like word vomit hour.
Fuck extravaganza.
Which was crazy. But then, you're also seeing, like, the people who are being like, wow, like, was it an NRL team or something like a football team, sorry, NFL team, something like that just tweeted out, we can breathe or something, which everyone was like, no, what are you doing? Like, no, it's not over. We haven't just solved police violence in this one instant. Like, this is step one on like a fucking hugely long road. You should be looking at more as one down, a fuck ton more to go. Like
the journey of 1,000 miles. Sorry, let's go. Say again.
I was saying that must have been Debbie, the Facebook intern, who just was like, got to put some positive vibes out there.
Yeah, they said 3 tweets a day, so. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right? That's how we should see this.
Yeah.
Like, I remember seeing something. I'm surprised I didn't see information about this at the time, but just recently it sort of surfaced again that the initial sort of report as to what happened to George Floyd
from the Minneapolis police, the initial sort of like press release that they had. It's like police attended a suspected forgery in progress. The gentleman had a medical event. I'm paraphrasing to some degree. Medical event due to a medical incident or something.
Yeah, died to some sort of medical incident, and police transferred him to hospital. It's like that would have been the story of what happened to George Floyd. Is just another sort of statistic unless it was actually captured all on video and presented.
Because that came out prior to the video.
Right.
Becoming viral and coming out and everyone seeing what happened. It is another humbling case of imagine if there wasn't the video.
And they all had body cams, all the cops. Like, so presumably all of that stuff was public record, but it took someone actually outside it, filming it, watching it all happen, watching the man die in real time.
Yeah.
For anyone to do anything about it. So the only reason that they've gotten a conviction in this case is because became a huge flashpoint, and because there were protests and marches and riots even, and because places burned, the country understood that they had to take this seriously. And what about all the times where it doesn't get filmed? What about all the times that there aren't protests and riots and fires, and that things are just swept under the rug like this could have been? It's good, but it's like, okay, as you say, Tom, one down,
a long way to go,
a babillion to go.
Got a long way to go. And then I think one of the most face-palmy responses, not from like the crazy conservative wing of the media, but from Nancy Pelosi. As we remember, like at the time, like so about a year ago, like, when Congress all came in wearing, I can't remember what they're called. They were wearing like a
caftans.
It's like kind of, like a shawl kind of thing, and just knelt in respect, and everyone's like, that's all well and good, but actually maybe fucking do something. Like maybe have a backbone and support maybe changing this system.
Because the National Black Caucus within the Democratic Party asked them to do that. So what are you going to do? Be like, no, fuck you, I'm not wearing your caftan. Like, there was kind of it was like weird virtue signaling politics, and it's not what people needed at the time, but like I feel like they sort of got painted into a corner because they give a shit about other people's feelings, so they just got made to look a bit silly in that argument, in that instance.
But this past week, like, not one to, she wants to put her foot in it again. In Nancy Pelosi's like public comments after like the verdict came out and all that sort of stuff, she essentially like thanked George Floyd for his sacrifice for the greater good or whatever. And everyone's like,
the wording I would have used.
Nancy, he didn't volunteer. He was murdered.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't say, all right, I'll stand up as tribute to die so as we can, like, make the world safer for black people. He was murdered. You don't thank a murder victim for being murdered.
It's
like, what?
Okay. Yes, but I agree with all of that. You do have to remember that Nancy Pelosi is 81 years old, right? So she may not necessarily be as with it as you might think. Like, for reference, her birthday, March 26th, 1940, is also the theatre premiere of The Fifth Column, which is a play by Ernest Hemingway. So she's real fucking old. She was born the day an Ernest Hemingway play debuted. Okay, so let's just put it in a little... She might not necessarily be absolutely in touch at all times, so...
I think what she's referencing there is that he's effectively become a martyr for the movement. But, I mean, yeah,
but not
a sacrifice. Thinking someone was a sacrifice would imply that they have volunteered to be said sacrifice.
I don't think he got up that morning to be like, I'm gonna get murdered by a white police officer so we can solve racism. No, he was murdered by a fuckhead police officer, like so many before him, and it's fucked. Like, he didn't choose to... I just saw that quote and I was like, are you fucking serious? Like, nailed it. Nailed it.
Just hand that one back to the Republicans.
Pelosi, you've done it again.
Yeah. And it's also, I guess, another thing sort of just we'd be far remiss not to mention, because, this has all been focused very much on Australia. On America. No such thing like this has happened in Australia. Like, there haven't been, like, prosecutions.
I was going to say, there's been plenty of deaths in custody. But yeah.
Yeah, there's been, like, actual accountability for this sort of stuff. Actually, that was a quote I heard. Sorry to jump back to America a bit. It was like someone framing it like, don't think of this as a victory. Think of this as accountability. Yeah. Like, this isn't... We haven't won. Well, people haven't won, but more the accountability has happened. The problem's not solved, but there's precedent
for show accountability now. Like, how rare it is that I think he's the second Minnesotan cop ever to be, like, convicted of a crime like this.
I thought only. Like,
no, it's the second ever or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Like, so it should give you an indication of, this is, as you say, some measure of justice and accountability and like, the rare instances where you've got a police chief that's aligned, where the blue line, the blue, wall of silence doesn't sort of help protect their own, where prosecutors are happy to go after the cops, where a jury actually convicts them. Like, these are a fraction of a percentage of, the incidents that happen actually get treated this way and actually get punished. So it's like a small measure of justice, which is the exception rather than the rule, right?
Yes. And has never happened here in Australia, despite the number of deaths of Indigenous peoples in custody. I think it's something like 400 at least in the last 30 years. Like, since they started, like a commission into it or something, like an inquiry into deaths in custody, and nothing's happened since. And so I think it's something very much it's sort of important to remember, because we always, this conversation is often framed around, police brutality on black people in America, and we don't talk about it as much in Australia as we probably should. I remember a few months ago, I was at the Invasion Day protest here in Melbourne, and one of the speakers told a story about decades ago, sort of when... Was it? No, it wasn't Vietnam. I think it might have been Tiananmen Square. When that was all going down, and seeing all these like, all these white people coming out and protesting against this, and being like, it's abhorrent what they're doing to people over there, and this racism's appalling, etc., etc. And that a lot of the Indigenous leaders were like, well, what about all the racism and brutality that's literally happening in your backyard, like right here? Like, where have you been for that? And at the time, like, a whole bunch of these people all kind of went, oh, you're right. And then they showed up for, like, Aboriginal people at the time. So, you're sort of saying,
do you remember in 1989 when minds could be changed?
Like,
what a thrilling time it must have been. You could say words and then things would change.
I might have mixed up the event they were protesting, but it was a similar sort of thing of them being like, well, haven't you noticed, like, it's all well and good to be against it happening in another country, but it's actually happening in your own country and you haven't said anything about it. And so then the speaker was talking about the Black Lives Matter protests of last year and George Floyd's murder and all these sorts of things could be another instance of that, to at least bring people's more attention that are like, hey, this isn't just an American problem. And that this is something that happens more than you think, more than you'd like to admit, and all this sort of stuff. And that, we should be having these conversations like about like defunding and abolishing the police or whatever, or talking about demilitarization and all that sort of stuff. This isn't exclusively an American issue, and that issue is very prevalent here, not in the same way, but definitely in the same way in that of white supremacy and people of color being killed in police custody. And it's an accountability that's never happened here, and that's something that we definitely need to change. And America's on the slow start. I don't know. I think that's just something that any listeners of ours who are based in Australia kind of need to check themselves on a little bit, because I certainly did over this past year and over this past week.
Since the the George Floyd thing happened and the Black Lives Matter movement, took off again. What was it, last year? There were movements in Australia, and there were, and the Prime Minister and the government sort of committed to, vague targets about re-looking into the stuff from the Royal Commission, actually like looking into that and trying to improve things. Whether or not any of that happens, because periodically they go through these things where they'll go, oh yeah, that's really fucked, and they'll try and recommit to something, but it doesn't necessarily ever happen.
And as soon as people aren't pressuring them to do it,
I mean, you kind of need seminal events to occur. It's unfortunate, but you kind of need sometimes seminal events to occur to shake things up and to change people's minds.
It just goes to prove that protest works, right? Like it does work. Like if we all just sort of sat on our heels and let Scotty from marketing run and do everything that he wanted to do, there'd be no progress on Indigenous issues. There'd be no progress on women's issues. Like that's what a conservative government means, is to conserve things exactly the way they fucking are, with power structures in place that behoove who? It's old white guys, right? Typically. So it makes sense that you need to have some kind of, even like center left, sort of like small L liberal politicians don't really do this. You need to have what I guess in times past have been called radicals, right? Protest movements, in order to really push things along and actually make progress. In the trial of the Chicago 7, as the Abby Hoffman and those sorts of guys were anarchists. So they were like lefty, borderline communists, right? So you need those big protest movements from radicals to really sort of push things along, because otherwise, like progress doesn't just happen by itself. It only happens with when you make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of progress, of course, the government is this week. They've also fixed climate change. I don't know if you guys heard about this.
Oh, fantastic!
This is the Australian government, of course, I'm talking about.
I love those vague commitments to maybe promises of some target.
No, sorry, Tom. Not a target. They're aspirations.
Aspiration. Okay. We're aspiring to net zero
at some point.
Right. Yeah.
To it. It's a goal.
Always aspire to net zero.
And are you doing anything to actually get to any of those targets, or?
Oh yeah, no, we've got policies.
So much. So much stuff. We're doing so much to get to those targets.
Sorry, George Sipos, Unnatural Selection Bugle. Just curious, what exactly was the detail of those policies? Because you sort of talk a lot about getting to net zero and sort of gas-fired recovery and all this sort of stuff. But like, could you tell me anything that's actually in one of those policies that might help reduce carbon emissions?
Technology.
Right, yeah. But what about the technology?
We're going to make it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then...
we're going to innovate.
We're going to innovate. We're going to innovate our way.
We're going to innovate.
Great. I'm satisfied. No further questions.
Let me tell you that. Where's the quote? I've got to find it now. Hang on, let me find the cafe. The cafe quote.
Yeah, it's not going to be solved by people.
No, look, let's tell you what's not going to happen, George. We're not going to achieve net zero in the cafes, dinner parties, and wine bars of our inner cities. It'll be one in places like the Pilbara, the Hunter, Gladstone, Portland, Whyalla, Bell Bay, and the Riverina, in factories of our regional towns and outer suburbs, which also happen to be our target demographic. But anyway, that's fine. What we're
don't think about it.
Sarcastically referencing here is the announcement, because as we've hinted over the last few months, the government loves announceables. They've announced a $539.2 million new clean energy spend. So they're going to invest that money into projects, which apparently Scott Morrison says will create 2,500 jobs and drive down greenhouse gas emissions. So this will be in the next budget. The next budget will include two major things. It'll include $275 million towards developing 4 hydrogen production hubs in regional areas and $263 million towards carbon capture and storage projects in hubs, an attempt to reduce fossil fuel emissions. So they're announcing things on one side, and on the other side, they're telling lefties to go fuck themselves, which is an interesting line.
That's a whole strategy, Cotton.
I think it's known as having two bob each way, isn't it?
Well, yes, but of course the bob they're having on one side, which is the money they're spending, isn't necessarily like they're not
going to do anything.
Policies, well, they're real policies. Like it'll be money that will be spent.
I've seen a lot of reporting this week about hydrogen. And just a lot of talk about hydrogen, and this is blue hydrogen versus green hydrogen. I know more about hydrogen than I ever cared to. And it's really because Scott Morrison has announced this, gas-fired recovery and all of this policy talk about, hydrogen. Hydrogen's going to be the fuel of the future. We can't go fully green, but I still need to act like I'm doing something. So we're gonna do hydrogen. Hydrogen's going to be the clean fuel that we need. Hydrogen and Batman are the things this country doesn't know it deserves. But
and when you say hydrogen, it's just like water, right? You can just pour it out of the tap, just have it on, have it ready to go.
Scooped it out of the tub.
Yeah, it grows on trees.
No. So hydrogen can be created. There are places in Australia that create hydrogen. It's probably a minuscule amount of the capacity that we would actually need to run an economy on hydrogen. The idea is that it's meant to be a bridging fuel, but the problem is the actual method of extracting hydrogen takes a lot of energy to produce. And if that energy is produced by renewable energy sources like solar and wind, then it's known as green hydrogen, right? Yes, we've separated, the hydrogen out from whatever the water that we found it in, and we're going to be able to use that as a fuel. But there's this whole infrastructure that needs to go around hydrogen.
Turns out it's more explosive than petrol and needs to be kept at cryogenic temperatures at all times.
It's not the sort of thing that you can just whack in
events where something running on hydrogen exploded in a blaze of glory. I think it's a photo. I can picture it in my head.
Oh, the huge manatee. It's obviously
the Led Zeppelin. That was it.
That was a different kind of hydrogen, but yes,
the different gases altogether. So you've definitely got a situation where the media, it seems like to me, the media is just like uncritically reporting out the government spin. They're like, we're going to be talking about hydrogen all week, rather than the fact that the government has failed utterly on the vaccine rollout and on energy policy, and has rolled 3 prime ministers, or 2 times over. over energy policy, can't seem to get its shit together on what the energy policy of the future is. They've abandoned all targets, abandoned all, kind of actual methods of getting to net zero by 50-50. And yet we're just meant to sort of take them at their word for... You're just like, oh, well, they've got a bunch of announceables, so it must be pretty... Those inner city liberals, the white, educated, wealthy voters that are also their core constituency, can rest easy thinking that Scott Morrison might actually have done something towards climate change, knowing full well in their heart of hearts he's actually done probably nothing.
The other aspect, which is the carbon capture and storage, there's one trial project, and they've been spamming this. By the way, carbon capture and storage, like, it's not a technology that's fully developed yet.
Not settled science. Yeah, exactly.
No, but it's also not fully the whole concept is funded by like the fossil fuel industry, because it is
the fossil fuel companies doing the equivalent of Philip Morris putting a filter on their cigarettes, going, nice and clean, so we're definitely off the hook for all that cancer stuff. That's what they're doing.
It's the thing of like solving the problem that we're causing.
Right. Let me shoot you in the hip and then say, hey, so you need a little Band-Aid for that bullet wound? I've got something for you that'll work just a treat. It won't be cheap, but I'll sell it to you.
The surgeon does very well out of it. So there's one project in Australia which where they're currently trialing that, and it's not really working. They're not storing enough of the gas to really make it viable in terms of the economics of it.
It just makes it sound like Ren and Stimpy with a fucking vacuum cleaner trying to suck up carbon out of the. So stupid.
It's no. With a vacuum cleaner standing at the end of the chimney.
It's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to capture. We're still going to pollute, but we're just going to capture all the carbon and then we'll bury it underground. We'll go through this whole rigmarole of burying it in a place where it can't get out. It's just like, or you could just use renewables. And like, no. It's all right. We got this. Don't worry about it. You're thinking about it. Don't think about it.
But look, I mean, the projects that they're investing in, the money is designed to help develop these technologies because currently, obviously, they're not working. So maybe in 20 years they'll be better.
When the planet's melted, we might have a solution. We have solutions to this. I had maybe a 45-minute argument with someone from work. It was like a very diplomatic argument. But
a productive
strongly wounded conversation.
It was at the end of the day after work drink, so we had a couple of daddy juices, and basically his argument was like, well, I'm 40 and I don't want to pay any more tax, and I'll be dead by the time things really roll around and start looking terrible, so I don't care. And I was like, that's not how any of this should work. Like
you might actually be a monster.
That's like, okay, that might be like a fiscally sensible decision for you, but it's like, most of the people in my generation find that morally monstrous, that you would just, like, if there was someone 100 years ago that could have done something about this, that would have made this, like, a small sacrifice 100 years ago that might have made this all better, and they didn't do it, wouldn't you be angry at them? He's like, yeah. I was like, that's you. You're the guy. You're that guy.
Yeah, that's you.
Now.
That's you right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure they saw the error of their ways.
No.
And, yeah.
No, we parted amicably if...
Well, that's what you want.
If we disagreed, even if we disagreed. But like all this stuff about hydrogen it just feels so much like the media just uncritically regurgitating. Like we're talking about hydrogen now when we should be talking about the government's complete fucking inaction on climate. And a lot of this hydrogen is generated with fossil fuel technology. So it's like a double way, like there's dual, triple levels of inefficiency there. Digging fossil fuels out of the ground to then create hydrogen, which needs to be then supported by other fossil fuels in order to actually, and that's called blue hydrogen, in case you're wondering, because it likes to fuck. But like multiple layers of inefficiency trying to like paper over this like terrible system when we could just go straight to renewables and battery storage. Like, why don't we just do that thing?
They've done it out of the goodness of their hearts. There's no ulterior motive for this announcement.
And it's certainly not because we're trying to line the pockets of our mates who work in the fossil fuel industry and donate to us. That certainly can't be in marginal electorates. That can't be anything to do with where we're directing this money. That surely can't.
No. Look, I'll give you guys an analogy of why they announced this now. So it's a group. You're at uni. It's a group project. Okay, group.
Love a
you're
group
all
project.
working.
I hate it already.
You've been given the task of doing the slide 3 on the PowerPoint, which is all about, how, I don't know, whatever your topic was. And it's the day before the presentation, and you haven't really done any work on slide 3 of the presentation. So you have to come up with something just to put on the slide 3. And so you just put up the easiest thing you can think of, which doesn't really answer the question, but still like looks like you've done something. And then you present it, and the lecturer doesn't really care, and you still get a HG. That's pretty much what has happened here for the government.
Except it's not just one slide of the presentation; it's all of the slides of all presentations that the government has ever created. I think that's maybe a better way of putting it.
So the group project in this terrible analogy that I just came up with is Joe Biden, President of the United States, climate summit, which was an online summit, which we'll talk about it in a second.
Well,
as to how
I prefer an online summit to all of these billionaires and country leaders hopping on each of their own private jets to meet in a central location to talk about climate change and how air travel is ruining the world. I prefer a Zoom summit. I think they just need to get their IT guys a little bit more onto it, by the sounds of it. They don't have the technical sophistication that you and I, Adam, have with our Discord chat open in a window that's being screen capped and then live streamed. They don't have that level of, TV production know-how. They're not wizards like us.
No. Yeah, they don't have that kind of know-how. They do have the nuclear launch codes, though, so...
Joke's on us. So, yeah, basically, over the last...
The joke is always on us.
Over the last year, the government here in Australia has been getting a lot of pressure from the UK and the US to do more on climate change. And obviously they were invited to this summit. They've previously been excluded from other summits because of the stance they've got on climate change.
Because we're doing too good on climate change. That's why you don't get invited to summits, is because you're just fucking nailing it.
Anyway, so yeah, this announcement was a couple of days before this summit. And so Scott Morrison could rock up for his part of the presentation and go, this is what we're doing.
Look, we did a thing.
And get his HD for the 30% mark that he needed to pass the subject. The bare minimum, by the way. Anyway, so yeah, as George said, they had the conference, and they were all sitting there on the Zoom.
Scott Morrison was on mute for a bit, which brought me an inordinate amount of joy. Started talking and you just couldn't, and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Prime Minister, I think you might be on mute."
It was an absolute shit show.
That's great.
Did you talk about the pre-recorded thing from, was it?
Yeah. So, because each dignitary got to speak. I think actually, from what I got, sidebar. There was a bit of shade going on with how far down the list ScoMo was to be allowed to talk. Like that he was number 26 to start talking or something, behind China and all these other sort of areas, actually to the point where Biden had left. He had to hop off for important president business, and someone else was there by the time Scotty from marketing got to have a chat. But anyway, so yeah, he was on mute for a bit, and people were like, Mr. Prime Minister, we can't hear you. And I'm sure he was like, thank you, Dad, kind of bullshit. But yeah, there's another part where it was French Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron, his turn to speak. And it wasn't telegraphed like this, but it turned out that his presentation was pre-recorded. He wasn't actually live on the call. So it started playing, but then there was commentary and interjection because something went on behind the scenes, and he just kept going. And people were like, what? It turned out it was pre-recorded. Anyway, he had his moment, and then later on, it's Putin's time to talk. But when it's all right, and we're getting ready to hear from Russian President Vladimir Putin, and then Macron's speech started again. It just started playing, and Putin's there going the fuck's happening?
Honestly,
you see he's talking to people off camera, being what the fuck is happening over here? Who do I have to throw in a gulag to get my chance to start talking?
It legitimately seemed like an episode of The Office. That's the hijack, Steve Carell's trying to go on 3 dates at once, and it's a hilarious mix-up or something. It's just so comically terrible. I don't understand.
Yeah.
These are world leaders. How can you not get... how did the fucking
get this right?
Apple announcements, when Apple did their virtual conference, that was
their showcase.
That was slick as all hell. They're doing drone shots through fucking things, and meanwhile, it's just it's nothing important. It's just world leaders discussing the fate of the world. That's fine. It's not important to get it right. Yeah. That's all right. Emmanuel Macron just fucking literally phoned it in. It's fantastic. I wish I could do that for my job. Just do a pre-record. Just go, hey, you want to buy this software? Have a look at this video. It's me talking about the software. And just click and just leave. I'll see you in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of
he did it best.
Of teachers at school being we're just going to put the video on. The relief teachers just be and here's this video.
For today's French class, we're watching Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone with the French language on. So that technically counts.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 45. Mummy's tired.
All right. Well, speaking of just popping the video on and relief teachers and absolute shit shows, do we want to talk about our education department's latest venture in educating young people on consent?
I don't even know what to say about it.
Sexually assaulting people.
This was the one.
There's so much to say about this.
This was like the one bright spot in my entire week. Can I just say, like, everything in my personal life, like work has been stressful, like everything has just been a complete shit show these last couple of weeks. But honestly, the taco milkshake thing kind of, it was a bit of a pick me up. I'm not gonna lie, I needed it this week.
It was unreal. So a while ago, I think they announced that, like something like nearly $4 million was being spent to like create like a sex education module, particularly
not enough as far as
focusing around consent, because that is a part of sex education that is especially lacking, as we are learning over many, many awful stories coming out of industries and parliament. But yeah, that there was going to be this video project, all that sort of stuff, and I think they released something like 300 plus video modules to the education department website, all this sort of stuff as resources to show. One of them in particular caught people's eye and became an instant meme and being absolutely hilarious. It's been dubbed the Milkshake video, but I think its actual title was Moving the Line. And I guess the analogy that they were going for... Well, actually, no, we'll go for what analogy we think they were going for, because the analogy kind of makes no sense. But the context of the video is that there's a man and a woman... seeming like young lovers in a like 50s diner-esque context, so already red flag.
Super fucking relatable. So relatable.
Each enjoying milkshakes, and like the man says something like, while they're enjoying their milkshakes, like the woman asks the man, do you want me to play the video instead? I don't know, like I think you might need a bit more description than just like what you hear them say, but I can try.
We'll explain it afterwards. We'll give them the audio, and for those who are viewing, obviously the live stream, will be able to see it with us. But I think it'll make sense for people to actually watch it.
To cross into the action zone, both people must agree.
Do you want to try my milkshake?
Yes, I do.
Is it better than yours?
You know, I think I prefer...
Moving the line is at least disrespectful, at worst abusive.
It's just a funny game, Bailey. I know you really like my milkshake.
How does a line move make you feel? It depends. For instance, some decisions may be more important to you than others. Moving the line on should we have pizza for dinner may not upset you as much as moving on can I touch your butt? Similarly, if someone moves the line once, it might not matter to you. But if someone moves the line over and over again, even on small decisions, then you might come to feel very upset. But the field model is clear. In a free and equal relationship, whoever moves the line is breaking the rules. They don't get to say how you feel.
There's so much to unpack here.
There's a lot.
So firstly, this is the big question that my partner and I have had since watching this video, like the big point of contention. Because obviously
what the fuck is happening?
They're trying to do a quote unquote innocent analogy to frame. Adam's just disappeared. There we go. Trying to use an innocent analogy to frame sexual consent, but the analogy doesn't feel like it quite works, right? So in this analogy, is the milkshake her vag?
I think
is that what the milkshake represents?
Seems like the milkshake is her vagina, but then if that's the case, she's rubbing her milkshake in his face, and then he says, "No, I prefer my own." Which his own penis? What is happening here?
The milkshakes represent the genitals. Yeah, that she's saying would you like to sample my vag? It's like, certainly. That's nice. Do you like it more than your penis?
You
know what? I think I'm all right with just my own penis right now. Thanks.
Milkshake.
That makes no sense.
I think, I feel like maybe it's because we were brought up in the era of my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. We automatically equate milkshake with a sexual object.
Legitimately, I think that line that's in there, which goes, how do you like that milkshake? Is it better than yours? I think that whole thing was literally just like
reference.
Thought it was trying to be a fun reference to Khaleesi's song Milkshake. But like then derailed the story of what was actually happening between these two, and they were just like, "It's fine, we'll roll with it. They're kids, they're morons, they won't understand the difference." I as an adult, am confused by like, what is the point that they are trying to prove here? Like,
I've had to watch it 4 times, but I think I kind of get it. I mean, this is if you have to watch something 4 times, guys, it's not working.
Yeah, but it's not Twin Peaks, right? This isn't a David Lynch fucking situation that you need to break it down.
If you remove the sexual concept out of it, it is literally just someone like, they're using food as an analogy.
Yeah, someone forced something upon someone else, and that's bad. Like that's what they're going for, which as a message is
right.
Good. That's the right message. But the way that they seem to be pushing it isn't. And there's other things that I have issue with. The second being, if they're going to go in this, let's have a little like cute analogy to work with our description of why it's bad to violate someone's consent.
Let's have a fun, quirky video about sexual assault, guys. Like a fun. It's sexual assault, but let's not make it a drag. It's got to be a fun time.
Yeah. They've made the woman in the scenario the aggressor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know when it comes to like consent and everything like that, it's not a gendered thing, but still, like the vast majority of instances of sexual assault are perpetrated by men and all this sort of stuff. So to make the conscious choice that the woman will be the, frankly, like crazy eyes lady rubbing milkshake in his face, like looking like an absolute nutcase.
The thing is, like, I've done shoots like this before where it's like we're going for a quirky, offbeat kind of fucking vibe. And
an educational video?
Well, yeah, kind of. It was a commercial, like internal commercial video for a large telco. Let's put it that way. And so
we've discussed it on the show before, but we'll keep.
I don't know what you're talking about. So, but yeah, where you're there and you're like, and they're like, no, again, goofier, like you're weirder. We want you to be hyper fucking high strangeness on this video, and they're clearly going for like a particular goofy, quirky vibe, and you as the actor in the situation is like, this is not going to work. I'm not going to look like such a fucking moron, but okay, this is all right. I'm getting $2,000 for this, so I may as well. And like that's. I really feel sorry for this girl. Like she's been sort of dragged.
I feel sorry for these actors.
Oh my God, you're going to be forever known as the psycho milkshake girl. Like she probably studied at Whopper or something, and she's like, like a trained actor or something like that. And now she's just going to be the psycho crazy-eyed milkshake girl. Like I feel so bad for these people. This wasn't their fault.
I don't know if it's a real, like, a rule, but it's an unwritten rule, which is don't do government ads because of this kind of thing. I think the same thing happened with the fake tradie bullshit like a couple of years ago.
But this is advertising. Advertising is dumb and quirky and it's like trying to be fun, but it's obviously fucking boring and banal. Like this is just what advertising is to a certain degree. Like it's kind of humiliating yourself for a one-off paycheck. Like
and the other thing is like if you keep watching the video, it sort of turns into it talks about control as well, about sort of, controlling behaviors and that kind of thing. So the messaging that they're really going within this is good.
But then why
in a weird way?
But why then? Yeah, why treat it with kid gloves? At no point during the video, as far as I can recall, do they use the word consent, or do they talk about?
They don't
sex?
mention sex.
They're not even talking about sex.
And this is aimed at like 14 to 17-year-olds. They know what sex is.
Yeah, they know what sex is. So, like, why not? If we're going to be talking about topics that are essentially, for lack of a better term, adult topics, and we're talking about these things to a group of young people that are almost adults, like, shouldn't we do it in a way that's a bit more direct? Like, talk about sex, talk about coercive control, talk about sexual assault, like, and do those things in a way that's like respectful of their intelligence, rather than just saying, I want my little milkshake in your face. And it's like, I can just imagine me as a 17-year-old looking up at this and be like, bro, what the fuck is happening right now?
But the thing is, like, the fact that I have to sit here and watch it 4 times and we have to recontextualize it and
Deeply
have to
confusing.
deep dive into it and write a 3,000-word essay on it. The fact that we're doing this means that it's probably not
that it's failed. It's failed in one job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey,
and there were other
here's a
aspects
message
of
to
it.
kids. Coercive control is bad. When people make you feel uncomfortable, that's bad. If someone makes you want to do something sexually that you don't want to do, that's bad, and you have the right to say no. Like, these are the messages that we should be giving to kids. We shouldn't be doing it in a way that's like coded, kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more.
And the extra lesson in there is that to the person who's making you feel uncomfortable, when they hear that you don't want to do it, stop.
Yes.
Like, that's the extra level. Like, it shouldn't. Yeah.
And you're right. It's so fucking
it.
tone deaf as well to make the woman the aggressor.
Yeah.
I thought, like, is that like them trying to be like quirky and weird and addressing the issue without actually addressing it? Or like,
it could even happen to you, or like that kind of thing. It's like, no.
Let's be honest. 97% of the time, it definitely fucking won't. But like,
I mean, you could argue that perhaps what they're trying to do, like, if it's men that are normally the controlling one, maybe by flipping the roles back, it makes men reevaluate, or, you know, young boys or whatever, reevaluate their own. You know what I mean? It's like a flip on the roles, so they look at it in a different way.
I think you're giving them so much credit that they do not fucking deserve.
I think that's way too much.
The public servants sitting around. Actually, this is the thing. Like, was it public servants, or if they've paid $3 million, it's probably been subcontracted to an advertising agency.
Yeah. So what was it called? Something liquid.
The Good Society.
Liquid Digital or something.
Oh, who produced it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, and this is the other thing.
Liquid Interactive Design Agency in Fortitude Valley in Queensland.
Yeah. So
Liquid Interactive.
And I reckon if you dig, and they've been awarded millions of dollars worth of contracts from the federal government. So I wonder if you dig deep enough, are you going to find some liberal donors in there? One wonders. But, yeah.
Yeah.
And this obviously, this campaign has come out after. And this wasn't necessarily an education campaign, but it was a set of government ads a couple of years ago. The Stoner Sloth ads.
Yep.
But this was actually filmed in 2019. And so this is the government just like cracking open a fresh one and going, yeah, we're definitely doing something about the sexual assault crisis in the government. Everyone just reach back into the files. What have we got? Have we got some sexual assault stuff that we worked on recently? Great. 2019. That'll do. Let's promote that as our initiative, our very powerful initiative that we're putting out there to young people to, you know, curb sexual. It just seems so weird and like sort of Christian and sort of tone deaf and like talking about sex without ever mentioning sex. Like, it's just so fucking weird.
Yeah, it's odd.
There's some extra parts, like just little like bits to it as well, because it's not just the weird ass video, right? But there's so many design choices in this that I feel are like massive red flags. Like when the part that you might have, like, so for those of you who couldn't see the video, aren't watching this live and are listening to this later, when they started talking about moving the line, and like they say something like moving the line across the maybe zone and into the no zone or the action zone. I was like, weird choice of words. But then when that happens, when the yes line crosses over in the graphic over the other person's no line and gets to the end, turns green. Now, this is me being really picky, but we are like educated and coded from quite a young age that green means go, red means go. So it's like when you like, when you violate someone's consent, green, like. What? That just feels like a basic level shit that they just should not be doing.
It honestly felt to me like 15 bureaucrats had written this script, and because they didn't want to like piss anyone off or like mention sex in a video about sex and consent. Like, it just seemed like it was one of those things. That was like, it felt like it was whacked together in an afternoon by about like a whole writer's room, and it just got so fucking far away from the original intention. And but like everyone was like, great, this technically ticks all the boxes that we got in the brief, so top marks. I guess.
So what would it's probably something similar to Off Utopia. So it'd be like they give the marketing agency a brief, the Liquid Infusion or whatever they're called. That's not the right name of the company.
Liquid Infusion.
Digital Infusion, whatever it is.
Liquid Interactive.
Liquid Interactive. When they so they get the brief, they come up with a concept. The concept goes back to the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats go, great, okay, well, we've got to get ministerial sign-off. Let's take it up to the politician. The politician goes, I'm not feeling it, don't like the vibe, sends it back to the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats go, okay, all right, okay, let's have a discussion. Okay, let's go back to the agency. And it does that 3 times. So what you end up with is a French-Canadian poodle.
Fucking breakfast. Yeah. I had a similar experience working for doing some voiceover work for a company that was contracted by the government. And I smartly charged by the hour because I was like, I know there's going to be a bunch of, weird bullshit revisions on everything. And sure enough, like 3 or 4 times back and forth. Oh, can we blur this out? Can we change the wording on this? I was like, this is the script you guys gave me. Like, you gave me the script and I recorded the script and did everything you asked and gave it to you. And they're like, yeah, but we want to change everything about it that we gave you. And I was like, couldn't you just do this part first and then tell me what to say and then I'll say that? Like, because, and there was like 3 or 4 back and forths and revisions on this project because nobody knew what the fuck they actually wanted, but they'd contracted someone. And so, this is just how it is.
And to be fair, we haven't watched all 100 other videos or how many there are in the series.
Oh, look,
fuck no.
Dear listener, I love you, but I don't love you that fucking much. I got my own shit to do.
Yeah. Also, if you're looking for this video, you have to search for uploads on YouTube because they have since pulled it from the modules.
Weird.
The ones that are related to the backlash of the milkshake video, I think that reference these particular skits or whatever have been pulled. So protest works, you guys. That's the lesson of today's show.
Well, look,
protest works.
Tom, I don't know, but for us, I think the woke people are just, they're taking over society, Tom. So there's nothing left.
I wish the woke people were taking over society rather than just screaming into the void on podcasts. But turns out we don't have any political power as of yet. So can't say anything nowadays, says the man who says whatever the fuck pops into his head at any given fucking opportunity.
That was Craig Kelly, by the way.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation about him not understanding video games.
That was just a weird tweet that I saw this morning that I was like, I don't understand. You're somehow, I don't know, equating the Dr. Seuss, ceasing printing to how successful financially Cyberpunk 2077 was and its cancel culture? Huh? Yeah, I don't get it. Anyway, moving on. There's a lot to unpack.
Confirmation bias. But no, look, another arch conservative, which was now leaving politics at the next election, of course. Wouldn't want to do a mid-election cycle. That would derail everything. George Christensen.
I hate this job, and I'm going to keep doing it for however long it is until there's another election. I hate this job so much, and I'm just gonna do it. I'm going to do it for an indeterminate amount of time. But I hate it.
Basically.
I hate it. It's all your fault.
So George Christensen, who's been the beneficiary of a 3rd consecutive term in government, said Conservatives aren't winning anymore. And he hates it. And he doesn't want any part of it. And he's not going to run.
He hates it.
Does not seem to be working for Conservatives.
No. Well... Yeah. Buckety bye, fuckface. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, you absolute turd burger.
Oh, look, I don't know, Tom. Look, he's a nice guy. Look at his primary, his big, achievement that he's happy that he got through Parliament was obviously the Adani Adani Carmichael coal mine, as he's one of his proudest achievements.
Oh,
I thought it was the weird singlet whip photo shoot was his greatest achievement, or when he threatened Greenie Punk with a gun.
Oh, I thought it was his many trips to Manila as the Minister for Manila during company company time and using company money.
Well, apparently he wants to go back to he wants to spend more time with his family who are, I think, overseas. So, I mean, look, fair enough. But
are they overseas in Manila?
Manila, yeah, I think Philippines.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Yep,
so he's one of the things he said was that creating change on many conservative issues is becoming possible. And he said, our politics just does not seem to be working when it comes to issues that matter to me and many others. Issues like enshrining religious liberty, protecting the unborn, ensuring freedom of speech, including online free speech, installing cheap coal-fired power so we can support jobs, ensuring we keep Australian land and strategic assets out of the hands of the Chinese Communist Party and preferably in Australian hands, and many other conservative issues.
That's, I mean, fantastic that he feels he's not winning on any of those things, because I fundamentally disagree with him on almost all of those things. So
you know, I think that sums up about pretty much all you need to know about George Christensen and why it's great that he's going.
You know, they can't even take a shit with the door open anymore. You know, it's PC culture gone mad.
Yeah. I'm loving this trend of ultra-conservative politicians just resigning because they're like, God damn it, like, no one puts up with our shit. It's like, yeah, all right, cool. I didn't realize it was that easy. Like, I thought we'd have to fucking coordinate a bunch of dipshits to vote you out. No, we just have to apparently whinge enough about you on Twitter and you'll just go.
Who's gone now? So we had Corey Bernardi, I think it was the last election. Obviously Craig Kelly's gone now. This, George
we'll apparently have Andrew Laming gone, it was like, oh, but wait a minute. You mean maybe I could not go? But I might go. Will I go? Yeah, I'll go. I might go. I won't go.
If he does resign, it will be to spend more time with his family at the Taracash Easter sales.
Yeah.
Man's a snappy dresser. He looks like he's off to the races every day.
He does love a very loud shirt, doesn't he?
Loud shirt and a swish suit.
Almost as loud as the camera shutter as he's taking up skirt photos.
On that note,
we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world, that have, do, or ever will exist, at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Dream.
And you can follow us all down to the Milkshake and Taco stand for a good old-fashioned feed. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
Were there actually tacos in the video, or are you just referencing some meme?
It's a separate video.
I think it's the same sort of one. They just kind of, I think they jump from milkshakes to be like, you know, forcing someone to eat a taco they don't want to eat or whatever, which also is thanks to memes, is kind of incredibly like a double entendre, isn't it?
It's what you want to do.
You know, when
communicating messages to kids, you want to mix your metaphors as much as possible. I think that's the best way of effectively communicating your message. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.